some delegates to the Film South Asia Festival from parts of South Asia. Welcome to everyone. And we'll have a chat for a little more than an hour. We're supposed to start at 9. Apologies for the late startup, but yesterday. Let me, this is going to be a conversation briefly, and then I'm a documentary filmmaker organizer together with Neetu Verma, who's just walking in, and who will find a seat for herself over there. Thank you. And so we are print journalists organizing a documentary film festival, and we've done it now for a quarter century and more. And so therefore, by way of apology, I'm actually not an expert on cinema like many of you in the audience are. So that's the reason not to keep it more, to make it not so much a conversation as questions and comments from the audience. So let's get started, Kabir.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You are actually what Neetu likes to call a Film South Asia alumni. We're a documentary film festival. You have ricocheted off documentary filmmaking into feature films. In that sense, you have abandoned us. Tabbi, tell us about your first experience here, and we'll move on from there.
Yeah, it's great to be back here after so many years, and Film South Asia actually plays a very important part in sort of the trajectory of my film career, my filmography, because I studied in Delhi, and at that point in time, for us, documentaries was what, in fact, the film school that I went to, which is MCRC Jamia, trained us more for documentary storytelling. So for me, it was a natural sort of path to take, and I brought one of my first documentaries, Forgotten Army, which was on a fascinating story of Azad Hind Fauj, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's Azad Hind Fauj, to Kathmandu in 1999. And the very first award of my life was what I got, the Grand Jury Award for that year. And that, in a certain sense, emboldened me to follow that story. And then I actually turned that story into my first drama script. But of course, because it was based in World War II and needed a huge budget. There was no way I was going to get that budget, as a first-time filmmaker in the Bombay industry. So I realized that very soon, and then of course I did. Kabul Express was my first one, but subsequently, years later, I think after 5-6 films, and after I had sort of achieved a certain bit of commercial success, and I could then go and demand that bigger budget, I made it as a mini series, which is available on Amazon Prime. It's one of the first series that Amazon Prime did in India, called The Forgotten Army also. Yeah, so it's lovely to be back after all these years, back to Film South Asia. As you said, I'm like the alumni coming back to my old school.
Yeah, that's what you said in that little clip you made from Bombay for us to share. Then does the documentary background give you that you are in the mainstream, but you seem to tackle topics across the spectrum? And I gather, my understanding is you do not make what's called masala films, right? No blockbusters. You go where you want to go, and then it seems the audience follows you. Does the documentary background help you in that?
For me, my documentary background is completely and totally the material I dip into whenever I'm writing my story. I mean, at the end of the day, as a writer-director, I am what I've seen, heard, read, traveled. And I was very fortunate that in the early part of my career, I traveled a lot. I attached myself, along with my documentaries, what I was doing with a very, very senior, very famous journalist called Saeed Naqvi in Delhi. I attached myself to him because I would see that he's just traveling all the time, because Saeed Bhai, as I call him, was obsessed with the reporting about news from a South Asian perspective. At that point in time, our channels were not traveling. All international news that we got was only through the prism of CNN and BBC. So he said, but that's not necessarily the perspective that we need. We need to have our Indian stroke South Asian perspective on it. So I traveled a lot with it and gathered so many stories because, it was a fantastic training ground for me. It gave me that ability to see the different perspectives of a story. It gave me the ability to see that what we see on news is not always true. It's somebody's truth, but not necessarily true for us. And my earlier films, whether you take Kabul Express or you take even New York, these are literally in that gap between the story that was told to us but the story that should have been told to us. It's literally questioning that. So, and subsequently for all my films, even Bajrangi Bhaijaan, I dipped a lot into my documentary research and my travels to sort of, recreate that whole journey that Salman's character takes. Or subsequently, when I made a film like 83, there was no way I could have done 83 if I didn't have the discipline of research which I learned during documentaries. It took me 2 years of research because 83, it's for those who don't know, it's about the story of the Kapil Dev and his team won the World Cup for the first time in 1983 when they were the lowest rated team in the world and literally were laughed off. Every pitch in London, and they went and won the World Cup for us. It's an event that everybody knows, but unfortunately in India, I think we just don't have the culture of archiving. I think it's to do with our oral culture. Father tells the son, son tells him. So I didn't find any material there. So it took me 2 years of research to do that. And really it was, I think, the training that we had in documentaries, how to set that up, that helped.
You said two things there that caught me away. So let me pull back, long shot. You use the term South Asia with such ease. For me, that is nirvana. Because we've been trying here from Nepal with colleagues all around the subcontinent to actually say that there is some places where we have to say South Asia rather than India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, etc. And in your conversation, this rarely happens, I must tell the audience as well, that somebody says South Asia with ease. How come?
Probably because, as I said, in my early years of traveling around with Saeed, I've traveled to each country in South Asia repeatedly. And what you call, a certain sort of South Asian presence, and you can feel it. When you travel to all the countries, there is something about this neighborhood which is unique, and it is truly a group of countries which have a lot of things in common. Whether it's history, whether it's culture, whether it's languages, so much in common. So I actually probably felt it from the early days of my career. So yes, maybe it comes very easily to me to see it as one unit. And you're right. I mean, in recent years, we've seen there's been a lot of, the whole identity of this area, South Asia, is not really spoken about. We've all become our own independent.
And that's where you have taken a jump. I mean, you talked about the intelligence agents in your film, agencies of India and Pakistan. You've taken a little child who's a Hanuman Bhakt, takes this child back to Pakistan, who's come here for medical treatment to the Indian side. That means you've picked up topics of your own, but you're able to catch the audience imagination. Has that happened in almost all of your films, or are there some films which you feel could have caught a larger audience than it did? Because on the whole, I think for the topics you've chosen, because of your craft, the audience has come with you and you've made blockbusters. But are there some films which you really feel audience hasn't gone along with you?
I mean, for sure. See, for me, I'll tell you, for me, success is not the fact that I've had a few blockbusters and the sort of money those films make. For me, the success is truly the fact that even till now, I pick up the stories that I want to tell. The studio doesn't tell me to tell, say, that why don't you make I never make sequels, for example, right? That's the norm. The moment you have one blockbuster, you'll probably spend the rest of your life making, logically I should have been making Tiger 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and just continue. But I couldn't. For me the story was over. Because I, as a storyteller, I'm not excited about retelling a story or a character. For me, I've lived that journey and gone. So I've been very fortunate that I was very fortunate that in my first 3 films, I had the support of a producer like Aditya Chopra, who actually allowed me to make 3 very diverse films. If you look at my first 3 films, Kabul Express, New York, and then Ek Tha Tiger. These are 3 very different films in terms of scale, in terms of the kind of story, in kind of the format of storytelling. And for whatever reason, audiences followed those films. All 3 went on to become really successful films at a time when I entered, I remember when I was struggling and trying to get my first sort of script done, a lot of my friends used to say, don't tell anybody you're a documentary filmmaker. Bore karega to. So, and today, if there is any USP that I have in the industry, I'm known as the guy who came from documentaries and brought a certain relatively more a sense of realism, a sense of logic into mainstream cinema, even into some of most masala films. There was a certain logic there. There was something, an attempt to sort of tell a story within the parameters of what really happens, and that's a lot of the audiences follow. But yes, of course, there always will be some films where you feel that this could have got a bigger audience. See, sometimes the reasons are beyond your control. Like what happened with 83, which I personally believe as a director's craft is probably my best film. We got hit so badly by Omicron that on the 4th day of release, the state of Delhi decided to shut down all theatres, and before the end of the first week of its release, 9 states had shut down the theatres. The ones that were open went down to 33% occupancy, and then of course the fear of Omicron. So 83 really got hit badly at the box office because of that. But subsequently, when it came onto the OTTs, it was another, like a new life, because I realized nobody had seen it in the theatres.
There's a very interesting interview of yours, and I watched that interview to prime myself for this conversation. This is Sucharita Tyagi. Yeah. Just 2 weeks ago, was it?
We recorded it about a month ago, but it came out. Yeah.
So I recommend the audience for all the questions that you think Karan Dixit couldn't ask, Sucharita does in that YouTube, right? You did say, though, in that interview, I got frustrated by the reach of the documentary. That's why I migrated to cinema. Well, on the one hand, that's really pleasant to hear that, because your sensibility then goes to 100 times larger audience or more than that, right? Nevertheless, there is abandonment here, Kabir.
But I haven't left. I might come back.
Yeah, okay. All right. That's good enough. We'll look forward to a future FSA with a documentary. There's one aspect, again, from that interview. No, not from that interview, but what I thought I should ask you in relation to that interview is, when you were approached by the producer Aditya Chopra, and that was really about as mainstream as you could get, right?
Yes.
Then, was there a time when corporate managers of film looked around for people like you and a set of directors, yes, and that has that time passed now? Meaning, as overall atmospherics in South Asia, including in India, in terms of the way politics is managed, has that meant that you have less freedom than before in terms of the big studios coming to you?
So for me, yes, I was really glad that finally, the one studio when I was trying to pitch the script of Kabul Express. See, today a script like Kabul Express would be picked up like that. But 17,
would be picked up or would not?
It would be picked up because it's a story that is an exciting story inherently, and not the politics of it, but the sort of structure of that film. But at that point in time, it was difficult to sell a story about 2 documentary filmmakers who get kidnapped by a Taliban, and then there's an American journalist, and there's no usual 6 songs and a love story that was easy to sell, right? A very political film, wanting to shoot in Afghanistan, and the one studio that I did not approach because conventional wisdom said that they never do anything like that is Yashpach Films. And but unknown to me, that script had gone to Yashraj, and that's how I got the call from Yashraj to come to them, because they were looking for a new voice. They were looking for different styles within their studio. Talking about today, if you see, there is an excitement still for new voices, but yes, the politics is something that people get scared of. Today, it's not very easy to make films which are making strong political statements in the mainstream. People are getting a little careful. People are doing a little bit of self-censorship, and that's unfortunate, because the industry, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, a lot of voices had started coming in with diverse backgrounds, and people were telling stories from different parts of the country, with different ideologies, which is now, also post-COVID, there's been a bit of a change in the way audiences are approaching films, and we're seeing a certain kind of cinema getting more audiences than what we used to see pre-COVID.
So if the audience can come up as a follow-up to that, I would welcome questions or comments from the audience from what we've discussed so far. But I have one last query before we open up, because we talk too much to hear it more. Looking at South Asia as a whole, not as 9 nation states, but as specific regions within South Asia. On the one hand, people say cinema, particularly Hindi cinema, will creates friendships, creates openings. But on the other hand, you could say it's making everything more unitary, like Bollywood rules. Within Bollywood, there are filmmakers like you that go for the various facets of life, for sure. But overall, Bollywood rules, which means there is a centralizing function there. And Bollywood is so powerful, not only in India, all over South Asia, and beyond now globally, that I'm wondering whether it is doing us a favor or an injustice for being so powerful. In terms of the voices, South Asia is considered to be one of the most variegated regions on earth. And yet you have Hindi cinema that rules over it.
I feel it's not so much just about the industry. I feel the industry also tells the kind of stories because, in a certain sense, the politics has prevented the access of the films to certain markets in an organized corporate way, right? Through piracy, everybody sees it, right? But the point is, the fact that politics comes in the way and say we cannot release our film in Pakistan. Now, imagine there's a population sitting there close to 200 million Urdu-speaking people who are as fanatical about Bollywood as we are, and we can't access them. And the moment you stop that, then the filmmakers don't feel the need to take into consideration their sensibilities,
which is a huge market.
So then everything becomes India-centric. Then you start getting these false notions of nationalism being pushed through, because we don't care about those. We're not getting any money from. So producers will look at it, cinema as just business, which is sad. The moment you had more sharing of talent, you had more sharing of films, you could access those markets, immediately people would become more sensitive to it. They'll say, why am I making this film which is in a very vulgar way criticizing another country or people from another country? They won't do that, even if they do it only through the prism of business, at least it'll be progress. It's like how Hollywood no longer will do anything anti-China, because that's such a huge market. They say, we want that $1 billion sitting in China. Don't make the villain Chinese. Make it Russian because we don't care about the Russian market, but don't make it Chinese. But in that sense, that also pushes people to be considerate and be sensitive to the larger region. I think Bollywood is becoming a little more inward-looking. And yes, it's a very powerful industry. The number of films we make, the reach that it has, and fortunately, it's an industry that's the content of which is enjoyed by people all over South Asia and other parts of Asia. But yeah, I think it's something to do with the politics.
But you say it's in inward looking, but inward looking from a particular gaze that's out of Bombay and out of Bollywood. So one is, of course, the Pakistan market, the Afghanistan market, the Nepal market, Bangladesh market, yes. But what about the fact that India, if you look at it one way, it's so many nations within. It's a nation state with so many nations. So if Nepal has recently, in the last month, seen a surge in Nepali language cinema. Is Bollywood actually crushing the possibilities of Assamese cinema? Just to talk about the northern half of India, of Bundelkhandi cinema, because the populations are large enough to sustain cinema, yet one centralized, although it's on the western edge, but centralized Bollywood takes all that market.
No, but I mean, yes and no. To a certain extent, of course, the Bombay industry is very dominant all over India, except the South. The South we just cannot penetrate. They've come into the North, but the South is a wall that Bollywood is not being able to penetrate. In the rest of India, Bollywood is very, very dominant. And sort of popular culture is all revolving around what comes out of Bombay. Having said that, there's also been in the recent years the emergence of very strong regional cinema. Like if you look at something like Punjab, you look at Bhojpuri cinema, these have been very strong. So it also shows about localization of content, which can never be replaced. So, there's something that the Punjab industry has been doing where today, I know that it's become powerful because sometimes when we are releasing films, one of the distributors will come and say, no, I don't think you should release that day because, there's a Punjabi film also releasing on that same day. 10 years ago, we would have cared. A big Bollywood film is coming, we don't care who else is coming with us. But today, if there's a, Daljit Dosanjh's film coming in Punjab, they'll say, oh, we lose a lot of money in Punjab territory, let's not go there. So it is happening, but not on all sectors. Like Bengal, for example, is not really being able to, recapture their glory days. So, but some centers...
Gujarati?
No. Gujarat is actually part of what we call... In fact, the distribution territories of cinema are still the pre-independence territories. So when we say Bombay, it actually is Gujarat also.
So Bombay, for Bollywood, for all its power, does not do justice to Marathi cinema or Gujarati cinema.
No, but Marathi cinema has in the last 5-6 years really come up strongly. There have been some films that have done huge business, and some of them have been remade into Hindi. Sairat is an example of that. So as I said, Marathi cinema, of course, I'm not even talking about South, those are very powerful centers of cinema, but Marathi cinema, Punjabi cinema, Bhojpuri cinema, these have already done well.
One point, just to go back to your earlier comment, and then we'll open up. And I've heard you say this a few more times, and it touches me because that's what I've been articulating, but from you it goes to a much larger audience, which is the difference between patriotism and nationalism.
Yeah.
Right? And nationalism is something, or ultra-nationalism is something where you denigrate the other.
Yeah.
Whereas patriotism is just that cultural sense of, which could you explicate on that?
No, I said this recently in a few interviews because I've noticed, unfortunately, there's been a rise of these very, with the false sort of sense of nationalism in their films, and people mistake it for patriotism because, see, I think for me, I was trying to understand what is the difference, and I think the difference for me is that in patriotism, you don't need a counterpoint. You're not good because the other one is bad. Your country is great because your country is great. You believe in your country with all its faults. And I, in fact, in Sutarika's interview, I said, the fact that you criticize your country is an act of patriotism because you criticize it because you care for it. But in nationalism, you cannot do that. And nationalism always needs that counterpoint. How much hai? Because wo pura hai. And that is something which, as I said, in the recent years, that narrative has started being built up. A lot of films are coming where there's a demonization of certain, people, countries, and they get projected as these hugely patriotic films, which I find a very false notion. You don't need to, it's like in my films, I said, Kapil Dev never, do any chest thumping or sloganeering. He just goes ahead and wins India's first World Cup. Now that's patriotism. Not because he has an enemy to fight against. Nobody in 83, if you've seen, is shown as an enemy. There's no that, usko harayenge to hame, milega World Cup. They're all players and you don't need it. The audience also sees it. Bajrangi Bhaijaan is a very patriotic film. And at the end of it, and the fact is that the people also recognize it. Otherwise, Bajrangi Bhaijaan would not become the monster hit it became because a lot of people say, this narrative will not work. But the fact that people are willing to pay money and see that film repeatedly means that they identify with. I would like to believe that people like the film. It's not only at the face value; they also like the politics of that film. They also understanding what this filmmaker is saying. And so if they're ready to pay their hard-earned money and come and see that film, I believe that they are identifying and agreeing with the politics of that film.
And the difference between patriotism and ultranationalism, I think applies not just to India, but every country of South Asia.
Yeah.
Pakistan, citizens of Pakistan also should love Pakistan for Pakistan's own sake.
Yeah.
And not to look at India and or Afghanistan, likewise Nepal. I think that's something that should what we call a udghosh from you that should go out across South Asia. When did things change, or did things change? You think, or was it a signifier when Hindi films before they were called Bollywood cumulatively, when they stopped putting Urdu in the credits and only Hindi and English or only English, but Urdu sort of fell away sometime in the 80s. What was that about?
That's been one of the sort of saddest parts of what's happening. You're right. And see, if you look at the early part of our industry, the writers all, Yash, under whom I did my first 3 films, Yash Chopra, would only write in Urdu. Dharmendra, our superstar, can only read and write Urdu. So I think that's the biggest tragedy of partition for us, that for some strange reason India decided that Urdu udhar chale gaya. I don't know why. Why did Urdu become a religious identity? Urdu was a language spoken in a part of India. Large part of it was India, and large part of it was Pakistan. But slowly it's gone. And you're right. Today it used to be the norm to have your title coming in Hindi, in Urdu, in English. The posters used to be in all 3. And Urdu's been dropped, but there's been a gradual sort of erasing of Urdu from our popular culture, especially from Hindi cinema, and that's really sad because Hindi, as we define it, is not really like, if you really see the words that they say Hindi, none of us speak that. We all speak Hindustani, which has a large part of Urdu in it, Farsi in it, Arabic in it, and of course, Hindi words. But Hindi, as defined technically, I have never heard anybody speak that language except maybe some anchors and newsreaders in Doordarshan.
Or maybe some of the other channels. Does Urdu, does Hindustan, does Bollywood still use Hindustani?
Absolutely. How can you have to, what is the golden principle of dialogue writing, right? It should be spoken language. How can you suddenly start spouting lines in a language that nobody will understand? Bollywood still speaks Hindustani, yes, but there has been an attempt, and then slowly the use of Urdu words is declining. And they're trying to find new words for it, which is sad. It's such a beautiful language, and sometimes an alternative just doesn't sound good.
So we have, I'm only referring to the fact that we have Farjad Nabi from Lahore in the audience, and also Shamia, actor from Lahore in the audience. At some point we can have a conversation out here or later. What's happening in Pakistan? Because in Pakistan also, what you call Hindi, the Hindi-ization, which is not really the language of the public. In Pakistan also, I'm sure there is much more of Arabization of the language. That's for later. As we now turn to the audience, let me firstly pay due respect And thank you to BP Koirala Nepal India Pratishthan. And Gitanjali ji and colleague are here from the Indian Embassy because they have helped support bring Kabir over here and host him. So thank you. BPK. फेरि भनिकन अब यहाँको जो इच्छा
Namaste, Kabir sir. I wanted to ask you one question. I'm sorry, can I ask you 2 questions? I wanted to ask that you have made Kabul Express and 83. Some of, as you mentioned, that 83 is your best film as you feel, and Kabul Express is the first film you made as in mainstream cinema. And both the films, I feel, have stories. And Kabul Express is something that you have made with your own experiences in Afghanistan, as you have mentioned in many of your interviews. But 83 is, in other part, an original event. It cannot be like, I guess you have had some bit of your own liberty, but I wanted to ask, have you used liberties that are very your own personal beliefs or your own politics in 83? Because while making Kabul Express, it was your first film. You wanted to keep your own stories, but 83 is a very original event.
And your second question later, just now.
Sure.
So firstly, I just want to clarify when I say in some of my interviews that 83 is my best film. What I mean is, for a filmmaker, it's basically the material that you set out to make and what you achieve. So I feel in 83 I achieved exactly what I wanted. I own every frame of that film. Sometimes I see my own film and say, "This is such a clumsy scene. I didn't like this. I wish I had not done this. Or I wish." But in 83, I own every single frame, good or bad. That's what I mean. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to perceive it as my best film, or I'm telling the audience that this is my best film. What I mean is, I as a filmmaker achieved what I set out to make completely and 100%. So to come to your question, yes, absolutely. Kabul Express is loosely based on my own experiences in Afghanistan as a documentary filmmaker, and 83 is the retelling of one of the most epic moments in post-independent India, and therein lay the challenge. See, in 83, I was very aware that now I'm telling the story of an event where you ask any Indian, especially above the age of 40, and they'll tell you, did you know about this 83? Or did you know this happened in 83? So they have all, and India is a completely cricket crazy country, right? And so when I was researching it, I wanted to reach that stage where any Indian who turns out to me and says, "Oh, did you know about 83?" I could turn around and say, "Yes, I know." And for that, we did 2 years of research. Because see, what happens is that, of course, I could rely entirely on the fact that that's a great privilege as a filmmaker for me to have, that I had access to the whole team, right? I had access to Kapil Dev, Sunil Gavas, all of them, and they could tell me their stories. But that cannot make the film, because I wanted to see it from a bird's eye view. What's happening around them that they won't know. And that's why I needed a lot of research in terms of going to the location, speaking to the people. Nothing is documented. I found in India, even the 5 odd journalists who went to England to cover 83 didn't have copies of their own articles. I finally found it in the Lord's archives. Thankful that they opened it up. So for me, the challenge was, now how do I tell a story that everyone knows, and yet sort of keep people engaged? Not a single match went down to last ball pe sixer mara. Nothing. All of them were either India lost terribly or they won with a huge margin. So that classic sports film trope, one ball left, we need 6 runs, and Kapil Dev hits a sixer. Nothing like that happened. So for me, the approach became, since I don't have that in the matches, how do I make it interesting? So I decided to sit down and figure out, okay, each match I'll approach through one of the players and what he is going through at the moment in time in his life. And that became a very interesting journey for me, to sit and start getting beyond the facts and the run rates and the thing. And see, they're cricketers. They're not natural storytellers, right? So sometimes they don't know what to tell me. They're still sticking to, this was my score and it was very difficult. The conditions were bad and the ball was swinging. And I said, no, tell me more. So like I remember Balwinder Singh Sandhu, who went on to become the coach of my cricket team, the actors cricket team. They all trained for almost a year. Ranveer Singh trained for about 6 to 7 months for that film. So he was training everyone. And this is 6 months into the process. I'm meeting Balwinder Singh Sandhu almost every day for 6 months and trying to get as many stories as I can. And then one day, so what I used to do is from Lords, I got the score sheets of all the matches. Each ball, it was like what happened. So I used to go through that and I used to try and find a pattern or something that happened with players. So one day I was sitting and going through the semi-finals and I realized Balwinder Singh Sandhu didn't take a single wicket, didn't score any runs. So I just casually joked and I said, Balu sir, you were terrible in the semi-finals. You didn't contribute at all. I mean, of course, in the finals, he took that legendary wicket on Gordon Bennett. But I said, semi-finals, you were rubbish. So he says, अरे क्या बताऊं यार मेरी मंगनी एक दिन पहले टूट गई थी my engagement broke the evening. I'm like, what?
That scene is in the movie.
Yeah. I said, he said, yeah, my engagement broke the evening before. And I said, and when were you going to tell me this? He said, यार इसमें क्या बताने की बात है यार? I said, यही तो बताने की बात है Ballu sir. So that was for me very important to get all those moments together to finally put 83. And the biggest challenge with 83 is almost every ball, some of the matches, you can even today see on YouTube. So I cannot even take the liberty of the ball didn't go here, it went 10 degrees here. I can't.
Wow.
So I had to recreate every single ball exactly the way it was. And it's physically impossible to do it if I shot real. Because imagine I'm telling the bowler, yeah, you must pitch here. I'm telling the batsman, you must hit it like that. And that fielder must catch it at that point. Impossible. One ball we'll be doing for 10 days. So there's a lot of VFX, which actually people don't realize. 83 is one of the most VFX heavy films of the Indian industry. See, unfortunately, all of us consume VFX or we like VFX when we can see it. So there's a purple dragon coming at us. We know, it's super VFX hai, because it's a purple dragon. But actually, the most difficult VFX is what we call invisible VFX, which you cannot see. So the audience should not even realize it's VFX. There's no way Ranveer Singh can bowl like Kapil. There's a reason why India never produced another Kapil Dev, right? Because it's impossible to bowl like Kapil Dev. So there's no way Ranveer Singh is going to bowl in 6 months training like Kapil Dev, right? There's a lot of VFX that goes into getting him to do that. There's face replacement, there's ball replacement, there's ball trajectory replacement. Some of those stadiums don't exist. Nobody questions, how did you shoot Old Trafford? Old Trafford doesn't even exist. There's like Emirates has given them from £5 million and put like a spaceship looking structure over there. So to do all that, it needed a lot of research to get it right. Tunbridge Wells, actually this is a story I must narrate. Tunbridge Wells is that legendary knock where it was a do-or-die match for India. If they lost that, they were going back home and they could only move forward if they won that. And it was India and Zimbabwe. For some reason, BBC thought, who's going to watch India and Zimbabwe? They decided not to broadcast that match. There's not a single, not 1 second of coverage of that match. Nobody knew that Kapil Dev is going to go and break the world record that day. And even he didn't know. So that's in the film, right? Because in those cities, none of these were. Please sit down. You've been trying to.
I have a question.
Okay.
The second question.
Nobody knew that there is. These days we have the records on our phone, right? We can check Google. When he was playing there and he had reached a certain figure, the manager suddenly started thinking, this is going into another zone. Okay, let me find out what the world record is. And he went running up to the commentator's box where they used to keep the books and he said, what's the world record? And then they checked and he said, oh, he's on the verge of breaking the world record. So they announced it in the stadium. But Kapil Dev was unknown. So he is hitting his sixes, fours, and then he takes the single and he sees the whole stadium erupt and they're clapping and Kirmani goes to him and in his sort of Hyderabadi style and he says, "अरे कैप्सी, तू इतने बड़े-बड़े छक्के मारा, ये लोग एक सिंगल पे काय को ताली बजा रहे हैं?" And Kapil Dev saying, "I don't know." So he says, "Pooch umpire." Says Kapil Dev is telling me I used to be very hesitant to speak to the umpires because I didn't understand their English, their accent. So he said, "अरे छोड़ना खेलते हैं." So he said, "पूछो." So he goes to the umpire and he says, "What happened?" And the umpire said, "What happened? You just broke the bloody world record." Those are the days to recreate that. And since there was no footage of Tunbridge Wells, I said, "Okay, let me ask Kapil Dev." I said, "Kapil sir, what do you do?" Kapil Dev said, "अरे यार Kabir, मैं तो trance में था. I don't remember anything. I was just in the zone. All I knew is that somehow we have to, as a team, reach the score." Because when he walked in, India was 17 for 5. So all those articles in the London newspapers about India should not even be invited to the World Cup. They're such a bad team. He saw them all coming true. So he said, "I don't remember anything." So I finally had to go to Kent County, meet people. I told them, "Can you please invite members of the club to come and, tell me." So they invited about some 10, 15 of these old gentlemen who came. And this one guy got up and said, "Kapil, smash the windshield of my car." And now for me, that was such a fantastic moment. It's a moment that Kapil doesn't know. But I was just, and there's not the shot in the film where you just show the mayhem in the car park. People are running to get their cars out. You don't need to show Kapil batting. You just need to show that to show what kind of a innings that was. So it was a very challenging film, but also one of the greatest journeys that I had.
Such a beautiful description of your craft, which you had alluded to earlier, the 83, right? Yes. Meaning not 86. that was your best film in terms of craft, and you just described it very well.
मेरो दोस्रो प्रश्न sorry. My second question is that you talked about how you don't let your craft be affected by a movie company, but while you make a movie independently, and while you make a movie with a big company and a banner, there comes a certain responsibility of a budget. They give you a certain amount where there are also people involved. They have some power where they ask you some questions. Sorry, they give you some suggestions. Then how do you keep yourself true to yourself and not let that affect you?
And there was a question asked to you by Sucharita. How do you fool the producers? Right?
Yes, thank you. My name is Ronak Karti.
No, actually, fortunately for me, as I said, earlier in the conversation, for me, my success is not the money that some of my films make or the popularity. For me, my success is that even today, I get to choose my own stories. So the fact that I did an 83, and after 83 I chose another true story of another sportsman, but this time it was India's first Paralympian. Normally a studio would not let you do that. So the one sports film has happened, now do something else. Or if there's a successful film, they tell you to keep making sequels. So till now I've been able to choose my own stories and have not been told by studios what to do. But of course, even more powerful than studios in our industry are the stars. So a lot of times the stars can come and say, "No, let's not do this, let's do this." But fortunately for me, I've also taken the stars into territories unknown to them. When I did Tiger, and it went on to what today they call the sort of the origin of the Spy Wars, which is now becoming the famous Spy Wars. The logic would have said, I should do the sequel to that. I should continue that franchise that I've created. But I went back to Salman and said, "Let's do Bajrangi Bhaijaan." There's no action in it. He thought, I've gone mad. There's literally 13 seconds of, I'm saying we literally timed it, of action in Bajrangi Bhaijaan. But had I gone to a studio, maybe they would have said why are you doing this? But Salman loved the story. Because, see, I went to Salman and I said, "See, Salman, what?" Because through the course of Tiger, I got to know him personally. I said, "Salman, the one thing that you feel very, very strongly about which is the whole, the composite culture of India, secularism in India, the fact that there should be, a friendly neighborhood, the way he reacts to people from different countries. I said, you never articulated this on the platform of which you're a demigod. And I feel this is a film for that. And of course, it is going to be an entertaining film. It is a sweet story and all that. And he said, okay, we'll do that. And I said, you know what? You and I will produce this because I don't want a studio coming in. They will not allow us to do. So actually, that became our first production together. And he did not, the studio that came in, he said, I'm not showing you the film till the day of the release. So the studio actually went in blind just because it was, me and Salman coming from our previous blockbuster title. So they said, kuch to theek kar rahe honge. But they knew a bit about the story and they were very shaky about it. They didn't understand what we were doing. And in fact, they lowered the prices of the tickets, thinking that people are probably not going to come for Bajrangi Bhaijaan. So yeah, I've managed to till now stay away from the studio executives telling me what to do.
So you make film for studio, but you are outside their solar system. Yeah? Wow. Out of the हजुर यता त्यसपछि यता.
Thank you, Kabir sir, for coming to Nepal.
नाम पनि भन्नुहोस् है.
I am Robin Baum. I have seen your Filmfare Award on Bajrangi Bhaijaan, and you said to Shahrukh that you and I were in the same school, but I choose directing over acting, and that was your good decision, I guess, even though you look good. Talking about that, I have seen your average films from Phantom to Sandhu Champion to Tube Light. You have done an exceptionally good job, and there was a good screenplay. I haven't missed a single screen that was boring. Talking about that, even a simple story can be built with a good screenplay. We lack a good screenplay. That's why our film get bored in the middle of the long run. How do you describe, or how do you, with your experience, tell us how a good screenplay can be written or can be executed?
Thank you so much for the backhanded compliment. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, a screenplay is the spine of a film. You can get a great story and destroy it with a bad screenplay. You can take an ordinary story and make it into a very exciting screenplay. How do you do it? I mean, I don't think I'm a screenplay guru to say it. I go by instinct. I go by some things that I've learned. Of course, you can read books. There's so many of these screenplay gurus who have written these books, and you have those, the sort of golden principles of things like enter a scene as late as possible, leave as soon as possible. All that is there, and it's true. But a lot of it also comes through just the experience of writing. I think writing is something you have to just keep doing it. I think as everything else in life, the more you practice, the better you become. I had the good fortune of being able to interact with somebody like Yash Chopra very early in my career, and he would read our scripts, and he was exceptional in screenplay. Of basically, he was brilliant in detecting the extra flam on the script. And I remember this is so Kabul Express, he had not read the script because it was the first time I was coming. It was supposed to be part of a new division within Yash Raj, because it was a kind of film that Yash Raj normally wouldn't do. So it's only after it was made that he saw the film. And I remember, so it was actually supposed to be part of a new division which would not say Yash Chopra Presents. It would say Aditya Chopra Presents, and these are the smaller films. And I remember Yash coming back from Berlin. He was in the jury of the Berlin Festival. He said, "Beta, tumne ek film banai hai. Why don't you show it to me?" And he sat there with this huge bowl of peanuts which he chomped through the film.
He didn't give you any?
No, he didn't. I was so nervous, him watching a film. I just sat behind and he finished it. And it was a short film. It was 105 minutes as compared to the other Hindi films that we make. And at the end of the thing, he said, "Bete, is picture pe mera naam jayega. My name will go on this." And he brought it back into the Yash Raj thing. But New York, he read. And it's a very interesting conversation. I remember he called for the screenplay. I sent it to him and he read it immediately. Next day, he called me to his office and he said, It moves well and it's very nice. There's only one scene which I'm not sure why you've put it there. And I said, which scene, sir? And he said, that college reunion scene that you've put in. And that was one scene that Aditya Chopra and I had been debating about for 2 months. Should we put it? Should we not put it? It's not really gentlemen, does not need it. And Adi finally said, leave it in the screenplay, we'll shoot it and maybe we'll decide on the edit. And he just immediately detected that and said, this is not necessary. I said, yeah, sir, I thought, Adi saying, shoot it and then we'll say, no, why shoot it? Waste of time, waste of money. Nikalo is it. So that was, I think, a great experience for me to be able to interact with somebody like that about the screenplay. And I feel a tight screenplay is the only way to keep a story moving without getting those drops. And there are things like, the test is if there's a scene and if you remove it, if nothing else moves in your screenplay. What I mean is if you remove one scene and no change is being made either ahead in the film or behind, it means that scene is unnecessary. Every scene has to have some link with every other scene. And those are the only scenes that finally should be in a screenplay. Everything else is fluff. You have to throw it away. Especially as writers, if we're writing ourselves, sometimes we fall in love with our own imagination and craft and say, "Arey, kitna badhiya scene likha hai." So it's also great to get feedback from people who you trust, who you're close to, because they'll be able to sometimes detect something which you might be in love with, but which is unnecessary. But yeah, pick up books by Sid Field and all these people. You do learn some of the sort of rules of screenplay. But as I said, with everything in cinema, I mean, there are rules, but then once you internalize those rules and then you decide how to break them.
एक हाउसकीपिंग नोट विषय को अभी हम यहाँ उर्दू में भी बात कर सकते हैं, हिंदी में भी बात कर सकते हैं और हिंदुस्तानी में भी. इतना मैंने कह दिया.
Namaskar.
Now,
Sorry, so sometimes I'm breaking into Hindi. Is everyone understanding that or? Okay.
because of the power of Bollywood, क्या करना?
We are now for Hindi cinema.
Okay, right.
My name is Usha Razak and I'm an actor. I would love to know what is your process of working with actors and how do you make them go into the character. I've worked with someone, a director with filmmaking style as similar as yours. We did the film in 2013 and until today that happens to be my best work. And you being Virgo and he being a Virgo, the perfectionist, and you just will not let go of. And somehow I felt free and yet in the hands of a good director. Can you please tell me the process of working with an actor? Thanks.
Thank you. See, I feel the job of a director is actually managing people's energies. It's very important for me to understand the energy of my technicians, my actors, my crew, and ultimately I feel it's all about managing that to make sure that 150, 250 people move towards realizing my vision. Actors, of course, are the top collaborators for me because ultimately it's their face, it's them on screen who's going to translate my vision. So I actually don't have one process for every actor because no two actors are the same. I spend a lot of time when I'm discussing my script with them to just understand what makes them tick. If I'm going to imagine that I'm going to put a Salman Khan through a workshop, then I'm stupid. It's not going to happen, right? There are other ways for me to excite him about the material. And it comes through conversations, it comes through referencing, it comes through this. And Salman Khan is an actor whose brain starts ticking just before you're supposed to call action. Just as he's come onto the focus mark, he'll suddenly at that time process the scene and say, "Arey Kabir, ek kaam kare." I said, "Ab bahut late ho gaya, ab koi kaam nahi karna, abhi acting karna hai." Ranveer Singh is somebody who loves the process. The more material you give him to chew on, the more workshops you put him through, he loves that. He does things like, for every character, he buys a perfume. and he uses only that fragrance through the process, because he says that the moment I spray that, for me, I'm into Khilji, or I'm into Kapil Dev, or I'm into Gully Boy. So every actor, Irfan is somebody who's very spontaneous. Like in New York, when I worked with him, you cannot tell him these are the lines. You have to give him the context, and then he will take your lines, add something in what he understands, and then so there's no one sort of approach to every act. It has to be different according to what their personalities are. Having said that, what I then do is I spend a lot of time narrating my story to them, a lot of backstories, context. Once we're on set, on the first take, I try and stay away from it. And this I do actually more than the main stars. I also do with the supporting cast, and sometimes the supporting cast gets confused. Some of them have later told me, we thought you're not interested because we're doing small roles, chota role hai. He doesn't want to even interact with us. But what I basically try and do is the first take, just before the take, if there's a secondary character who's come in, an actor who's relatively new, and I go and give him or her my direction, they will follow what I'm telling them to do. And then I might lose what they might have processed and brought to the table. So for the first take, I try and not even talk to them. I said, you give me the take, I might discover something that I would never thought about. And that's happened so many times. That an actor suddenly brought us a unique perspective to the character or the line, and I said, oh wow, this is lovely. Okay, let's go with this. So I think it's something which changes with every actor, changes with every story. It's a very dynamic process. I don't think there's one set process that I follow with my actors. But yes, if it's a true story, if it's a story that needs research, then definitely I believe in workshopping. If it's an actor who's never been like Munni in Bajrangi, she's a 6-year-old girl, right? So obviously you have to workshop her. But those workshops are not acting workshops. I don't believe that a 6-year-old is a good actor or a bad actor. She's as good as how the work that you're going to get out of her. The workshopping is to make her comfortable with the presence of people on the set, this intimidating looking technology, or these jibs and these cranes and those drones and huge cameras. Because I remember, so when I was casting Munni, so Salman is very close to children, right? And he was extremely fond of my daughter Saira. Saira was exactly 6 years old when I was casting for a 6-year-old, and Salman would keep saying, cast Saira, make her Munni. And I said, no, I want to do the process and then see. And then one day we called Saira and we said, Saira, do you want to do the film? And she was very clear. She said, no. I said, why not? She said, I don't want to be told in a loud place every day what to do. Just very clear. So then I realized with that, I need to find a 6-year-old girl who will have the stamina to go through a 100-day shoot spread over 6 months. A child can be excited day 1, day 2, Are Salman uncle is there, 5 days, 10 days, and then I want to go back home. But so for me, we had shortlisted 10. We did an extensive audition. I think we auditioned about 2,000 girls for that role. Yeah, because and the advantage was that she doesn't speak in the film, right? So we actually auditioned girls in a lot of countries, and finally 10 were shortlisted, brought down for a month-long workshop in Bombay. And in that workshop, basically we saw which of the girls has the stamina to go the distance. And Harshali was somebody who you could see that she had that will to just go through it.
Well, thank you for such intricate and intimate details about how you work with actors. Did you have a follow-up? Okay, yeah.
Hello, hi Kabir. This is Prashant. So my question is regarding your journey from documentary to feature film. I'm pretty sure it's a bit different. So you mentioned that the travel thing that helped a lot you in feature film, and it also inspired you. Could you also share a few more things that helped you from a documentary that you experienced that helped you a lot on the films that you've done, and more on like technical aspects?
No, I think it's just a mindset. Of course, travel is something. I'm a firm believer in travel. I believe travel really. I can say clearly that I've been shaped by my travels. The fact that, when I was between 24 and 27, 28, those years with Saeed, I traveled some 70 countries. And I am today what I am because of what I've experienced through my travels. It completely opened me up as a person. It gave me a certain, perspective to look at things. So in terms of documentary, what really helps you are these things. It's not about taking the craft, the thing. It's like, for example, documentary trains you to not make such a big fuss about things like, if I want this or this is not available. Documentary teaches you to make do with what you have. And when I started filming, that was something that came very, the where to place the camera came very instinctively. There was no great discussion about it. I said, okay, this is where I want the camera. This is the way I want it. Do we have this? Okay, we don't have this. We'll move it. We do have this. We don't have this. We'll move it. I think that really, in fact, for me, for a long time, till I think my fourth film, I could never understand why there's so many people on set. I've had so many of these exercises where my executive producer, Rajan Kapoor, who's also with me during documentaries, I used to sit with him and I used to point out people on set. Acha, whoa, why is he needed? Then some logic would come here. Why is that person needed? Because I just couldn't understand why 150 people milling around on this damn set. Why can't there be less people? So it's really the attitude and the mindset towards things like, as I mentioned earlier, the discipline of research, the discipline of sort of planning and going in, the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. I still love shooting on real locations. A lot of times my producers don't understand. We'll bring the Kashmir ke pahad to you in the studio. Now you shoot on the green screen, but I can't do it. My creative juices dry up on a set. I feel like if I don't go. So I think that also comes from my background as a documentary filmmaker, to the urge to be on real locations, react to the light, react to the situations around you. I end up using a lot of non-actors in my films. I like somebody who's interesting, so we just bring them in, you give them a bit of training, and then you use them. And I've got some fabulous results with such performers. So I think it's more just these little things that
I have a follow-up on that. So you made the journey from documentary to cinema, and took a lot of understanding of film and audiences and subjects and research there. What do you think can go reverse from cinema to documentary? What are the skill sets and understandings and preparations that you do?
Or if somebody was doing the reverse journey. It would again bring its own set of skills, because there is a lot that you learn on a mainstream cinema set. Just the sheer logistics, the sheer planning that you have to go through. Script. Yes, of course, script. Though in a documentary, you don't really shoot to a script, right? You shoot to an idea. So there is also some unlearning that will have to happen, because you have to be open to, and the magic of documentary sometimes really happens. You don't know what's going to happen, and it just happens, right? So the ability and the agility to capture that is also something which comes with your training. So I've not seen too many people doing this reverse. Of course, in the West, you see these very established filmmakers then going and presenting these documentaries. I don't know whether they actually go and make it, or do they lend their name to sort of distribute it.
Well, we are at Film South Asia. We're going to watch your career very closely to see whether you'll make the return trip as well. And what a lovely quote you gave. In a documentary, you don't film to script, but you film to an idea. Right? That's something we carry with us. Question.
Hey Kabir, welcome to Nepal. I think I raised my hand just to get an opportunity to speak to you. My heart was pounding louder as I was waiting for
We can hear it.
Yeah. So I think the previous participant nearly covered my question from documentary to cinema. But now since I have the opportunity, I would like to alter the question to a different angle, which also I have like maybe 10 questions in my head. What I notice is the storyline that you choose to direct. And director is the leader of the cinema. Story can be shitty, but the way you show it, people can be influenced. Cinema inspire people, and your movies inspire. You depict humanity exists. You depict positive in being good. So, how do you decide the plot? Which story to pick? What is that drive behind choosing what to direct? Thank you.
Thank you. We can always, in retrospect, try and analyze and intellectualize why we picked up something. But I must say, a lot of it is just your gut instinct. It's just you hear something, and something in you says, "This is the story I want to narrate." And I've always gone by the gut instinct. I've heard something, and every pore of your body screams that, okay, this is the story I want. I have to tell this story because it's very important, because you have to carry that passion through. For a film is a 1 year, 1.5 year commitment, and you have to feel as passionately about that story throughout that journey. You can't suddenly after 2-3 months get, now I'm bored. Now what do I do with this? So it's a gut instinct. It's just something that tells you, okay, this is the story that's exciting me. Sometimes it could be the most unlikely thing. Like I'll give you the example of 83, right? Everybody knows the story of 83. I knew the story of 83. I remember as a school kid, being in Hyderabad, and people were, there were fireworks going on, people dancing on the street. So it's a great story. But contrary to popular belief, I don't follow cricket the way most Indians do. I'm not one of those fanatic cricket watchers. I get bored watching cricket. So when first there's this person who came and gave me the material for 83, it wasn't really a script. It was loose sort of internet research put together in a storyline, and that material was lying on my desk for a month, and I didn't read it. And one day I was going on a long flight. I said, okay, let me carry this and read it on flight. And I read that. It wasn't even a full story. It was just moments from 83. And by the end of the flight, I remember getting this lump in my throat. And I said, why am I feeling like this? And then I sent the material to one of my close friends who was a cricket fanatic. I said, okay, you read it. And he said, yeah, there's something strangely very moving about this story. There's something that's just, I can't put my finger on it, but it's hugely inspirational, it's very emotional. And so for me, that initial, that reaction to the story, where I got off the flight with this huge lump in my throat, I knew somewhere that, okay, this is going to be a film I'm going to make. So yeah, it's like Chandu Champion, Murlikant Petkar. When I first heard that, somebody gave me an old newspaper cutting, and I read it, and I said, this can't be true. It's not possible that a person such as this exists and we don't know about him. I pride myself on being a reasonably well-read person, well-informed person. And I said, I'm shocked that I don't know the name of this person, that I don't know Murlikant Petkar. And then when I sort of, again, set up a team to go in, nobody even knew where he was. It took us 2 months to track him down. And then when I met him and I spoke with him, I instantly knew this is my next film. It's that, you just want to then go ahead and make that film come what may. And I'm glad people, agree to collaborate with me and put that vision to life.
Thank you for choosing authentic stuff for me.
Thank you.
We'll go for another 15 minutes. And I should tell you something. Call off, chair or coffee, call off this up. One penny, Hamisa Helmel got on
Hi Kabir, my name is Prateek. Thank you for the enriching discussion so far. My question is short, but I don't think it's simple. What's your strategy to deal with self-censorship, especially in the context of the worsening political climate in India? And only if you would like to talk about it.
No, of course. See, I try not to put that burden onto myself. I try and say, okay, if I want to make this statement, ultimately, how do I make this statement? How do I have to navigate the current scenario and still say, because if I completely self-censor myself and I don't say what I want to say, then what's the point of making a film, right? If your ideology is not going to come through your film, then why are you making a film? It's unnecessary. So I think the point is how to say it, yet camouflage it, or say it in the layers beneath. See, I've often said, because I dabble in mainstream cinema, it's very important, and this is a very important point for people who want to bring in politics into mainstream cinema. I feel is that you have to make a film that can be enjoyed at face value, yet have the politics and everything in the layers beneath. And there will be some people who will not catch those politics, but they should still be able to enjoy the film at face value. But if they do catch the undertones, then the viewing will be that much more profound for them. A classic case for me is Bajrangi Bhaijaan. Bajrangi Bhaijaan is where, you see, at the end of the day, we are all always attempting to do what we believe in. We don't always get it right. Bajrangi is one of those cases where it really, the sweet spot of what I wanted to do, where you want to tell a story, it's very political, yet it's hugely entertaining. And that happened. Every single scene has certain politics running in it. It's couched in humor, which sometimes I firmly believe that humor is much more profound than saying it in a like a dialogue. For example, the chicken song. This is something I often talk about. Chicken song of Bajrangi is probably the most popular song for children in the film. It's also the most political song. It was written in the wake of the beef ban. It basically says, this is Chaudhary Dhaba. Half of it is veg, half of it is non-veg. You decide where you want to sit and eat. So these are the things that if you can slip in, and not everybody catches it, but some people do. And those who do, really then start enjoying that piece of film. So yes, you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, the times we're living in right now, we do need to sometimes think of even names. Sometimes just names you are considering and saying, oh, this might not be a good idea. And then you try to circumvent that. But it's all about being able to, I think, circumvent those rules and yet be able to say, see, the Iranian industry is a classic example, right? There's an industry where the diktat is given that a man cannot touch a woman, and yet the most beautiful romantic stories come out of Iran. So I think it's about just navigating the minefield and then still being able to tell you, makes it difficult, but I guess it's also then, if you manage to do it correct, it's that much more thrilling.
But I think about Bajrangi Bhaijaan and the India-Pakistan relationship, fact is, South Asia has a fourth of the world's population. And South Asia's collaborations are really stymied because of the India-Pakistan relationship is so bad. And it helps all of us, from Sri Lanka to Myanmar to Afghanistan, if India and Pakistan patched up. So in that sense, this is a powerful film, which is entertainment, yet it goes under the skin of its very theme and topic. So thank you for that.
Hello, Kabir sir. Hello, sir. I wanted to ask that. I am Dhananjay. I wanted to ask that your stories are more related to, some of them are related to South Asian countries, like Kabul Express was into Afghanistan and Tube Light was in the backdrop of Indo-China War. Again, Bajrangi Bhaijaan was with India, Pakistan. Then can we say that Kabir Khan has neglected Nepal?
You can. I'm guilty.
So, can we ever see a story
I would love to.
based in Nepal that will be directed by Kabir Khan?
See, for me, so I'll never use location just a beautiful backdrop. So you'll never see me doing a love story and then, okay, let's cut to a song with beautiful mountains in the backdrop. That won't happen.
But we have all the mountains.
That is true. But the thing is, for me, a location is also character in my film. I like to use locations as characters in my film.
हमारे mountains में character है.
I need to find a story that will inherently be about something in Nepal.
Story भी दे दूँगा.
Please, that will be great.
Beyond the cinematography, I was having focused on this story.
Yes. So for me, those locations have to be unique to the story. It's like a Kabul Express cannot be anywhere but in Kabul. Or a New York cannot happen. That story won't stand in any other city. Like the story of the post 9/11 illegal detentions that took place. It can only happen in New York. You take that story and put it in London, it's not going to work. So for me, I would love to get a story. Please DM me on my Insta. We are always hungry for stories. At the end of the day, my dream, let me tell you this, I'm a writer by default. I didn't want to become a writer. I think it's a very torturous part of filmmaking, where you're sitting alone and you're knocking your head against the wall of how to write a script. I became one because by the time my script reached Aditya Chopra, Kabul Express, I didn't have money to pay writers. So मैंने कहा खुद ही जितना लिख सकते हैं लिख लो. And then when he said, okay, let's do this film, the first question I asked him is, can we hire a writer? And he said, for what? I said, to write the script. He said, I want you to shoot exactly what you have written. So that made me a writer. But my dream is till today that somebody sends me a screenplay, I read it and I say, oh wow, this is my next film.
I must tell you that the kind of questions we got today gives me a hint that perhaps we'll get that script out of this film.
Please, anything you have, set in Nepal, I would love to read it.
Then let me follow up on that question. This will be the last question has been heard from the audience. I'll just follow up on Prashtamani. If Nepal were to have stories, it would be lovely for the rest of South Asia to watch a mainstream film, let's not call it Bollywood, but based in Nepal. But it should carry, it should be a story. It should not be seen because it's about Nepal, but because it's a story. All right? And in that sense, I should just tell you what's happened right now within the Nepali sphere. There are two films that made a mark in the last month and a half. One is called Shambhala. It is doing the international round in the festival circuit. And then there is Punabadur Gosaragi, which has been pumped, energized by Nepali audiences here. And both are fine films. And there was a question asked to you by, perhaps in that interview I referred to. You make mainstream films, but yet they also go to festivals. So you're the best person to tell us, in this context in Nepal, where the Nepali audience seems very energized to go to Nepali cinema, right? What would be the direction to take within Nepal and beyond Nepal?
My God, that's, I don't think I can even attempt to answer that, because that's like, make me sound like some sort of a guru. But I think it's great that a local audience is supporting their own cinema. That is something very, very important. It's happening, as I said, in parts of India where, of course, there's this whole domination of Bollywood, but at the same time, there are these local industries that are managing to tell their own stories. Because there is something about local content that can never be replaced by stories coming from outside. So the fact that, you were telling me just yesterday about this new film that has being supported so strongly by the audience, and the tragedy is that I wish these films could also travel to India. We could get some releases there. Our biggest problem is we don't have theatres. We don't have theatres enough to accommodate just the Hindi films. So the space for, say, films to come from Nepal or Pakistan or Bhutan, and there's some brilliant films being made there also. It's just unfortunate that the commercial space is not available. And there is an audience, there is a smaller, of course, the niche audience that would love to watch these films. The problem is that one of the biggest problems of the Indian film industry is the lack of screens. We just have 4,000 to 5,000 screens available for all our films. And to put it into context, China, with a similar population, has 110,000 screens. We have 4,000. And this is a country which is like crazy about films. So therefore, I think films from the region are not able to release in India.
May I, in conclusion, make a couple of points, and then will you join us for coffee downstairs?
Tea.
Tea. He's a tea guy, and there is coffee and tea downstairs with milk or without. I want to make a couple of extra points here, just because this audience is so good, and the questions you ask is really, have taken us. Just the answers from Kabir themselves show that the audience here is alert and quite up in the game. So thank you for that. And let me just ask you, this is our first event of Film South Asia 24, and you could be the ambassadors for the rest of the festival, because you are clearly immersed in the topic of film and documentary and cinema. So, एउटा कुरा त यहाँ सबैलाई धन्यवाद. तल चिया र कफीको लागि आउनु नै होला. अर्को चाहिँ this beautiful poster we've got with the Nag Kanya and the documentary in the Anthropocene. Anthropocene is a subject we chose, a scientific term specifically because the public has to know what is happening to us and our ecology, not in Nepal, not in Himalaya, not just in South Asia, but the globe. And Nepalis, to begin with, for the kind of country we have got to begin to understand the Anthropocene, which begins by understanding the meaning of the term. You lots of documentaries throughout this festival, and some of the documentary makers are right here from different parts of South Asia, from Jharkhand, from Lahore, from Calcutta, and from Bangladesh tomorrow. Some people will be arriving. So please interact with them, but do tell others about the documentaries, because I can tell you that some of these documentaries are crafted as well as Kabir Khan's films. That's what I would say. And as far as this poster is concerned, I would like to recognize somebody who happens to be here. I'm gratified that he's here. Swarup Nisaju made the entire poster. Because now we're going from documentary cinema to illustrations and art, and we've been very lucky that he's with us. I'll also speak, just to mention Sohini Ghosh, your teacher at Jamia, and Sabina Gadio, because three of you were in that festival in 1999. And so documentary filmmakers have, in a way, nurtured cinema. And let's also hope someday cinema will come back to documentary. Come on downstairs.
Thank you so much.
हिमाल खबर नेपालको विश्वसनीय डिजिटल पत्रिका।